I felt the glass shatter beneath my foot before I heard it, a sickening crunch that sliced through the otherwise silent house. A cold wave of dread washed over me as I looked down to see the remains of Vivienne's antique perfume bottle lying in glittering fragments around my bare feet. What was that? Her voice, sharp as a blade, carried up the stairs. Too late. I scrambled backward, my heart hammering against my ribs. This wasn't just any perfume bottle, it was Lalique crystal, a family heirloom that my stepmother treasured more than most of her actual family members. Certainly more than she treasured me. Fiona? Is that you up there? I considered lying, contemplated jumping out the window, even flirted with the idea of hiding under the bed, anything to avoid what was coming. But the sound of Vivienne's heels clicking up the hardwood stairs told me I'd run out of options. "I'm sorry," I said as she appeared in the doorway, her tall frame casting a long shadow across her bedroom floor. "It was an accident. I was just looking for some aspirin and..." The lie died on my lips as I registered her expression, not anger, but something far more calculated. Her red-painted lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Well, she said softly. "In my bedroom again, Fiona Morgan." How predictable. I wasn't. Snooping? Vivienne supplied, stepping carefully around the glass to reach her vanity. She ran one manicured finger along the polished surface, as if checking for dust. "Of course you were. Just like you've been sneaking in here for weeks." My confusion must have shown on my face because she laughed, a brittle sound that held no warmth. "Did you think I wouldn't notice my things going missing? First the emerald earrings, then my grandmother's sapphire brooch." She turned to face me fully. "And now, conveniently, my Lalique bottle is destroyed. Were you planning to tell me you broke it, or were you going to let that be another mysterious disappearance?" My mouth opened, then closed. The accusation was so unexpected, so utterly absurd, that I couldn't formulate a response. What? I haven't taken anything." "Save it." Vivienne waved her hand dismissively. "Your father may be blind to what you are, but I'm not. A common thief, living under my roof." The injustice of her words hit me like a physical blow. I'd moved into my father's house just 3 months ago after my mother's death, a house that now belonged to Vivienne, thanks to their whirlwind romance and marriage just 6 months prior. The ink on the marriage certificate had barely dried when my mother's cancer diagnosis came. And now, barely 2 months after her funeral, here I was, 24 years old, grieving, and being accused of theft by a woman who had effortlessly stepped into my mother's place. "That's not true," I said, my voice sounding small even to my own ears. "I haven't taken anything of yours." "Then you won't mind if we search your room," Vivienne replied smoothly, already moving toward the door. "Richard," she called down the hallway. "Come up here, please. Your daughter has something to tell you." My stomach dropped as I heard my father's heavy footsteps on the stairs. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. But it was. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I couldn't help wondering if this had been Vivienne's plan all along, to drive a wedge between my father and me, ensuring I'd never again feel at home in what was once my childhood sanctuary. As my father's concerned face appeared in the doorway, Vivienne's eyes met mine, cold and triumphant. I had no idea then that this moment, this perfectly orchestrated scene of the shattered perfume bottle and her missing jewelry, was just the opening act in a drama that would unravel everything I thought I knew about my new family. "What's going on?" my father asked, looking between us with growing concern. "Your daughter," Vivienne said, her voice dripping with false sympathy, "has been helping herself to my possessions. And now she's destroyed my grandmother's perfume bottle." A flash of disappointment crossed my father's face, a look that cut deeper than any of Vivienne's accusations. He'd always been quick to believe the worst of me, even when my mother was alive. It was as if some part of him was perpetually waiting for me to fail. "Fiona," he said, his tone already weary with resignation. "Is this true?" "No." The word burst out of me. "Dad, I swear, I haven't taken anything. The bottle was an accident, I was just looking for aspirin." "In my bedroom?" Vivienne interjected. "In my private vanity?" "The bathroom cabinet was empty," I explained, desperation creeping into my voice. "I thought you'd help yourself to my things?" Vivienne finished smoothly. "Just like you helped yourself to my jewelry?" My father pinched the bridge of his nose, a gesture I knew all too well. It meant he was too tired for this, too tired to look deeper. "Fiona, if you've taken something that doesn't belong to you." "I haven't." I insisted, tears of frustration threatening to spill. "Dad, you have to believe me." But I could see in his eyes that he wouldn't. It was easier for him to believe Vivienne's narrative, the troubled daughter acting out, than to consider she might be lying. "We should search her room," Vivienne suggested, her tone so reasonable it made my skin crawl. "Just to clear things up." My father nodded, defeated before the battle had even begun. "Fiona, give us permission to look through your things. Let's put this to rest." It wasn't really a request. And even though I had nothing to hide, something inside me rebelled at the indignity of it all. "Fine," I snapped, brushing past them both. "Search away. You won't find anything because there's nothing to find." I stormed down the hallway to my room, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood. Behind me, I heard Vivienne's soft voice speaking to my father, too low for me to make out the words. Whatever she was saying, I knew it wasn't in my favor. My bedroom, once a sanctuary, now felt like a cell as I watched them enter. Vivienne's eyes scanned every surface with predatory focus, while my father stood awkwardly in the doorway, as if reluctant to cross the threshold into my private space. "Well," Vivienne said, moving toward my dresser. "Let's begin, shall we?" For the next 20 minutes, I sat silently on my bed as Vivienne methodically went through my belongings, opening drawers, rifling through my closet, even checking under my mattress. My father hovered near the door, his discomfort growing more palpable by the minute. "Nothing here," Vivienne finally declared, though her tone suggested this was merely a temporary setback rather than vindication. Relief flooded through me. "See? I told you." "Wait," Vivienne interrupted, her attention caught by something on my bookshelf. "What's this?" She reached up and pulled down a small jewelry box, one I'd never seen before. My pulse quickened as she opened it, her expression transforming into one of triumphant satisfaction. Well, well," she said, turning to my father. "Look what we have here." Inside the box, nestled on black velvet, lay a pair of emerald earrings and a sapphire brooch. My stomach dropped. That's not mine. I've never seen that box before." "Really?" Vivienne's voice was silk over steel. "Because it's sitting on your bookshelf, in your room. I didn't put it there." The panic was rising now, choking me. Someone must have planted it. My father's face had gone pale. "Fiona, enough." "Dad, please," I begged, my voice breaking. "You know me. You know I wouldn't do this." But the look in his eyes told me everything I needed to know. He didn't believe me. Or worse, some part of him had expected this all along. "I think," Vivienne said quietly, "we need to have a serious conversation about Fiona's future in this house." She's my daughter, my father replied, but his voice lacked conviction. Where else would she go? Vivienne's hand slid around his arm, possessive and comforting all at once. Of course she's your daughter, darling. But at 24, perhaps it's time for her to stand on her own 2 feet. Especially given the circumstances. The betrayal cut deep. Not just from Vivienne, whose manipulation I had come to expect, but from my father. It was written all over his face, the relief at having an excuse to distance himself from the burden I'd become. I'm not leaving, I said, surprising even myself with the steadiness of my voice. Not like this. Not with everyone thinking I'm a thief. The evidence speaks for itself, Vivienne replied coldly. Evidence you planted. The accusation hung in the air between us, heavy and dangerous. My father's jaw tightened. That's enough, Fiona. You've been caught red-handed. The least you could do is admit it. I will never admit to something I didn't do, I said, rising to my feet. And I will prove that I'm innocent. How? Vivienne asked, her tone almost pitying. The jewelry was in your room. A memory surfaced then, a detail I'd nearly forgotten in all the chaos. The security cameras, I said suddenly. Dad had cameras installed after the break-in last year, remember? They cover the upstairs hallway. Those cameras haven't worked in months, my father dismissed. We disconnected them after the subscription service became too expensive. Actually, came a new voice from the doorway, they're working just fine. We all turned to see Julian, Vivienne's 17-year-old son, leaning against the doorframe. His expression was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes I couldn't quite decipher. What did you say? Vivienne asked, her poise faltering for the first time. The cameras, Julian repeated, pushing off from the doorway to enter the room. Dad had me set them up again last week. Said he wanted extra security since he's traveling so much now. You're lying, Vivienne snapped, but her voice lacked its usual confidence. Julian shrugged, pulling out his phone. Am I? Because I've got the app right here. And guess what? He looked directly at me. It records everything. Including who goes in and out of which rooms, and when. The silence that followed was deafening. Vivienne's face had gone completely still, her eyes fixed on her son with an intensity that would have melted steel. Show us, my father said finally. And just like that, the tables had turned. The drama Vivienne had so carefully orchestrated was about to reach an unexpected final act. One that, I suspected, she had never seen coming. I watched Julian's face as he navigated to the security app on his phone. There was something in his expression, a determination, perhaps, or a resignation, that made me wonder what exactly we were about to see. Here, he said, handing the phone to my father. This is from 2 days ago, around 3 p.m. Fiona was at her art therapy session downtown. I drove her there myself, remember? My father nodded slowly, his eyes fixed on the screen. I moved closer, peering over his shoulder at the grainy footage. The timestamp in the corner confirmed Julian's statement, 2:57 p.m., Tuesday. And there, crystal clear despite the video quality, was Vivienne, slipping into my bedroom with something clutched in her hand. My father's face drained of color. Vivienne? But she wasn't looking at him. Her gaze was locked on Julian, a cold fury radiating from her every pore. You little traitor, she hissed. Julian didn't flinch. There's more, he said calmly, taking the phone back from my father's unresisting hand. He swiped to another video. This is from this morning, about an hour before Fiona came upstairs. This time, the footage showed Vivienne entering her own bedroom, removing something from her jewelry box, the emerald earrings and sapphire brooch, and then walking directly to my room, where she placed them on my bookshelf. The silence was thick enough to cut with a knife. So, Julian concluded, pocketing his phone, unless Fiona has mastered the art of being in two places at once, she didn't take anything. My father turned to Vivienne, his expression a mix of shock and dawning anger. What is the meaning of this? Vivienne's composure cracked completely. You don't understand, she began, her voice taking on a desperate edge. She's been turning you against me from the moment I moved in. Always watching, always judging. I had to do something. So you framed my daughter for theft? My father's voice was dangerously quiet. You planted evidence and accused her of taking things that you yourself had hidden? Richard, please, Vivienne pleaded, reaching for his arm. I was just trying to protect our family. She doesn't belong here, she's not one of us. The cruelty of her words hung in the air like poison. Get out, my father said, his voice barely above a whisper. Vivienne blinked, her perfect facade crumbling. What? Get out of my daughter's room. Get out of my house. You can't be serious, she stammered. Richard, after everything we've. Now. His shout made us all jump. Pack your things and leave. I want you gone by morning. Vivienne's gaze darted between the three of us, my father's thunderous expression, Julian's impassive face, my own shocked disbelief, before settling back on her son. Julian, she said, her voice eerily calm, get your things. We're leaving. Julian didn't move. No. The single word seemed to echo in the suddenly quiet room. What did you say to me? Vivienne's voice had dropped to a dangerous whisper. I said no. Julian stood a little straighter. I'm staying. For the first time, I saw genuine fear flash across Vivienne's face. Julian, don't be ridiculous. Come with me now. Why? So you can ship me off to boarding school like you've been threatening? Julian's voice was steady, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. No thanks. I'd rather stay here, if Mr. Morgan will have me. My father looked as stunned as I felt. Julian, this is between your mother and me. I wouldn't put you in the middle. I put myself in the middle, Julian interrupted. When I saw what she was doing to Fiona, what she's been doing to everyone, I made my choice. Vivienne's laugh was harsh and brittle. You ungrateful child. After everything I've done for you. What have you done for me? Julian challenged. Moved me halfway across the country, away from my friends, my school? Married a man you barely know for his money? Tried to frame his daughter to get her out of the way? Tell me, Mom, what exactly am I supposed to be grateful for? The silence that followed his outburst was deafening. Vivienne's face had gone completely white, her lips pressed into a thin line. Fine, she said at last, her voice cold and controlled once more. Stay. See if I care. But don't come crawling back when they get tired of you too. With that, she turned on her heel and swept from the room, leaving behind nothing but the lingering scent of her expensive perfume and the wreckage of her failed scheme. For a long moment, none of us spoke. Then my father cleared his throat. Julian, he began awkwardly, I don't want to put you in an impossible position with your mother. It's not impossible, Julian interrupted. It's actually pretty simple. She's toxic. Has been for years. He glanced at me. I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner, when I first saw her messing with your stuff. I was scared. I nodded, understanding all too well the fear that came with standing up to someone like Vivienne. Thank you, I said quietly. For telling the truth. Julian shrugged, but I could see the weight lifting from his shoulders. It was the right thing to do. My father was still standing there, looking lost in his own home. I should. He trailed off, then straightened his shoulders. I need to make some calls. Legal calls. As he left the room, I found myself alone with Julian, my stepbrother, the unlikely ally I never knew I had. So, I said, not quite meeting his eyes, boarding school? A ghost of a smile crossed his face. She's been threatening it since we moved here. Says I'm difficult and need structure. Are you? Difficult, I mean? Only when necessary. This time, the smile reached his eyes. Like today. In that moment, standing in my bedroom surrounded by the evidence of Vivienne's betrayal, I realized something unexpected. I wasn't alone in this house after all. And maybe, just maybe, something good could come from this mess Vivienne had created. Want to help me clean up the glass from that perfume bottle? I asked. Since we're apparently stuck with each other for a while? Julian's smile widened. Sure. Why not? It's not like either of us has anywhere else to go. As we headed back to Vivienne's bedroom, soon to be just another empty room in the house, I couldn't help wondering what tomorrow would bring. One thing was certain, whatever came next, it would be nothing like the life Vivienne had tried to engineer for us all. And for the first time since my mother's death, that thought didn't fill me with dread. The house felt different the next morning, lighter somehow, despite the tension of Vivienne's departure. I'd half expected to come downstairs and find her sitting at the kitchen table, acting as if nothing had happened. But the only person in the kitchen was Julian, hunched over a bowl of cereal. Morning, I said, heading for the coffee pot. He grunted in response, apparently not a morning person. We sat in awkward silence for a few minutes, the only sound the crunching of his cereal and the ticking of the antique clock on the wall. She's gone, Julian finally said. Left around 5 a.m. Took most of her stuff. I nodded, unsure what to say. I'm sorry, I offered. He shrugged. Don't be. It's not the first time she's walked out. The casual way he said it, like it was just a fact of life, made my heart twist. What do you mean? Julian set down his spoon. My dad, my real dad, she left him too. When I was 12. Just packed up and disappeared one day. Came back 6 months later like nothing happened, but things were never the same. He looked up at me. She does this. Gets bored, runs away, comes back when she needs something. It's her pattern. Before I could respond, my father walked in, looking like he hadn't slept at all. His eyes were bloodshot, his usually neat hair disheveled. Morning, kids, he said, attempting a smile that didn't reach his eyes. There's something we need to discuss. Julian and I exchanged glances. Is it about Mom? Julian asked. My father nodded, pouring himself a cup of coffee. Partially. She's gone, as you know. But there are complications. What kind of complications? I asked, a knot of anxiety forming in my stomach. My father sat down heavily at the table. Financial ones, mainly. It seems Vivienne had access to more of our accounts than I realized. The knot tightened. How bad is it? Bad enough, he admitted. She emptied our joint savings account before she left. And there are some significant credit card charges I'm currently disputing. Julian set his cereal bowl aside. That sounds like her. My father gave him a sympathetic look. Julian, I want you to know that none of this is your responsibility. You're welcome to stay here as long as you need to. Thanks, Julian mumbled, not meeting his eyes. But I should probably figure out my own situation. My dad, my real dad, he might. Your father is in Singapore, my father said gently. I called him this morning. He's in the middle of a 2-year contract and doesn't think it would be beneficial for you to join him there right now. Something in Julian's expression closed off. Of course he doesn't. An uncomfortable silence fell over the kitchen. I couldn't help noticing how young Julian looked in that moment, not the defiant teenager who had stood up to his mother, but a lost boy who had been abandoned by both parents in the span of 24 hours. Well, I said, trying to inject some positivity into the gloom, at least we still have this house. And each other. Sort of. My father's grimace told me I'd hit another nerve. About the house. Dad, no, I groaned. Please don't tell me. It's not that bad, he hastened to add. But there is a second mortgage I wasn't aware of. Vivienne apparently had the paperwork processed last month. It's substantial. Julian's laugh was bitter. Classic Vivienne. Set everything on fire and then disappear into the night. We'll figure it out, my father assured us, though his tone lacked conviction. I've got a meeting with the bank this afternoon. And my lawyer is looking into our options regarding Vivienne's actions. Can he prove she committed fraud? I asked. That's what we're trying to determine. The security footage Julian provided is helpful, but it only proves she planted the jewelry in your room. The financial issues are more complex. Julian stood suddenly. I need to show you something. He left the kitchen without another word, returning moments later with his laptop. Setting it on the table, he opened a folder labeled Insurance. What's this? My father asked, peering at the screen. Evidence, Julian replied, clicking on a video file. I've been documenting Mom's activities for a while now. Ever since I caught her going through your office last month. The video showed Vivienne at my father's desk, rifling through his papers with practiced efficiency. She pulled out several documents, laying them on the desk and photographing them with her phone. She did this every few days, Julian explained, opening another video. Usually when you were at work and Fiona was out. I think she was looking for financial information, account numbers, passwords, that kind of thing. My father's face had gone pale. How did I not see this? Because she didn't want you to, I said quietly. She's obviously had a lot of practice. Julian nodded. There's more. Emails, texts, she wasn't exactly careful about hiding her tracks. I think she assumed no one would be looking. Why didn't you say anything? My father asked, his voice hoarse. Julian closed the laptop. Would you have believed me? Over her? The question hung in the air, uncomfortable in its truth. My father hadn't believed me when I protested my innocence. Why would he have believed Julian accusing his wife of fraud? I need to call my lawyer again, my father said, pushing back from the table. Julian, I'll need copies of everything you have. As he left the kitchen, phone already in hand, I turned to Julian. Thank you, I said. For having the courage to collect all of that. And for showing it to him. Julian shrugged, but I could see the war of emotions behind his casual facade. Like I said yesterday, it was the right thing to do. Besides, he added with a hint of a smile, I'm pretty sure she was planning to leave me behind anyway. At least this way, I get to control how it happens. Is that why you stood up to her? Because you knew she was going to abandon you either way? His smile faded. Partly. But also because what she was doing to you wasn't right. And I was tired of watching her destroy people's lives. The simple honesty of his words hit me harder than I expected. All this time, I'd been so focused on my own grief, my own struggle to adapt to life with Vivienne, that I hadn't stopped to consider what Julian might be going through. He'd been uprooted from his home, moved into a stranger's house, and was now watching his mother tear apart yet another family. "Well," I said, forcing a lightness into my tone, "welcome to the dysfunctional family club. Membership apparently includes facing financial ruin and possible homelessness." Julian's laugh was genuine this time. "Could be worse. At least the company's decent." Our eyes met across the table, and I felt something shift between us, a tentative understanding, perhaps. We weren't friends, not yet. But we were allies in the storm Vivienne had left behind. And right now, that was enough. The next few weeks passed in a blur of legal meetings, bank appointments, and the slow, painful process of untangling our lives from Vivienne's web. My father aged before my eyes, the stress carving new lines into his face. Julian and I fell into an uneasy routine. We were polite to each other, even occasionally friendly, but there was still a wall between us, built partly from the awkwardness of our situation and partly from the lingering shadow of Vivienne's influence. I was sorting through some of my mother's old things one evening when Julian appeared in the doorway of her studio, a space I'd been gradually reclaiming since Vivienne's departure. "Hey," he said, hovering uncertainly. "Your dad asked me to tell you he'll be late again. Another meeting with the lawyers." "Thanks," I replied, setting aside a stack of my mother's sketchbooks. "Did he say how it went?" Julian shrugged. "He didn't look happy." "Great." I sighed, pushing a strand of hair out of my face. "That's becoming a theme around here." "Yeah." Julian lingered, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "Listen, I've been thinking about something." I raised an eyebrow. "Sounds ominous." "It's about my mom. Or, more specifically, her friends." Now he had my full attention. "What about them?" Julian stepped fully into the room, his expression serious. "There's this woman, Diane Reynolds. She and my mom were really close. Did a lot of business together, I guess you could say." "What kind of business?" I asked, already suspecting I wouldn't like the answer. "The kind that involves marrying rich men and then systematically draining their bank accounts," Julian replied bluntly. "Diane's done it at least twice that I know of. And I'm pretty sure she helped my mom set up the fake accounts where she's hiding your dad's money." I set down the sketchbook I'd been holding. "How do you know all this? Remember those emails I showed your dad?" There were a lot more. Some of them mentioned Diane specifically. He paused. "There's also the fact that my mom's been staying at Diane's beach house since she left here." "Wait, you know where she is?" I stood up, indignation flaring. "Why haven't you told my father?" "The police are looking for her." Julian held up his hands. "I only found out yesterday. She posted a picture on Instagram, thought she was being subtle, but I recognized Diane's place from when we visited last summer." "We need to tell my father," I said, already reaching for my phone. "Wait," Julian caught my arm. I think there might be a better way to handle this. One that doesn't involve the police, at least not yet." "Why would we keep the police out of it?" "She stole thousands of dollars from my father." "Because," Julian said slowly, "if the police get involved now, she'll just disappear again. And all that money disappears with her." I paused, considering his words. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we go there ourselves. Confront her. Get her to tell us where the money is before the authorities show up. I shook my head. That's a terrible idea. She's not just going to hand over the money because we ask nicely. No, Julian agreed. But she might if she thinks it's her only way out. Especially if we have evidence of other crimes. Crimes with more serious consequences than financial fraud. What other crimes? Julian's expression was grim. Remember those medical prescriptions that went missing from your dad's study? The ones for his heart condition? I nodded slowly. He thought he'd misplaced them. He didn't. My mom took them. And I know she's done it before, stolen prescription medication and sold it. It's a felony, Fiona. The kind that comes with serious jail time. How do you know she did this? Julian pulled out his phone. Because I have video of her doing it. And texts between her and Diane discussing how much they could get for the pills. I stared at him, stunned by the depth of Vivienne's deception. Julian, why are you only bringing this up now? He had the grace to look ashamed. Because I was scared, okay? These women, my mom and Diane, they're dangerous. Not in a violent way, but they destroy lives. And they're good at it. Really good. All the more reason to let the professionals handle it, I argued. The professionals can't prove intent, Julian countered. They can't prove my mom was planning this from the beginning. But I can. I have years of evidence, Fiona. Years of watching her operate, of documenting her patterns. If we go to Diane's beach house, confront her with what we know, what I have, she'll crack. I know she will. I sank back down onto my chair, trying to process everything Julian was telling me. Even if you're right, and that's a big if, what makes you think she won't just run again? Or call the police on us for trespassing? Because I'm her son, Julian said simply. Her only child. And despite everything, she won't want me to see her hauled off in handcuffs. She's too proud for that. The certainty in his voice gave me pause. He knew Vivienne better than anyone. If he believed this could work, we'd need a plan, I said finally. A real one, not just show up and hope for the best. Julian's face lit up. So you'll do it? I didn't say that, I cautioned. I'm saying I'll listen to your plan. And then we'll decide together whether it's worth the risk. He nodded eagerly. That's fair. I've actually been thinking about this for a few days. I have some ideas. As Julian began outlining his thoughts, I couldn't help wondering if I was making a huge mistake. Confronting Vivienne directly seemed dangerous, potentially illegal, and definitely ill-advised. But as I listened to Julian describe the extensive evidence he had collected, the videos, the emails, the text messages that proved Vivienne's actions were part of a calculated, long-term scheme, I found myself considering the possibility that he might be right. That perhaps the only way to truly protect ourselves from Vivienne was to confront her on our own terms. Okay, I said when he had finished. Let's say we do this. When? Julian didn't hesitate. This weekend. Diane's throwing some kind of party on Saturday night. Mom will definitely be there. How do you know that? Instagram again. Diane posted about it yesterday. I shook my head, amazed at the carelessness of these women who had orchestrated such elaborate schemes. And what about my father? What do we tell him? Julian bit his lip. Nothing, for now. If we tell him, he'll try to stop us. Or insist on coming along, which would just make things worse. So we're supposed to just disappear for the day and hope he doesn't notice? It's a 4-hour drive each way. We can be there and back in a day. Julian looked at me earnestly. This could be our only chance, Fiona. Once the police get involved, everything becomes a lot more complicated. And there's no guarantee they'll ever find the money. I took a deep breath, weighing the options. On one hand, Julian's plan was reckless, potentially dangerous, and definitely ill-advised. On the other hand, the current legal approach wasn't yielding results, and my father was sinking deeper into depression with each passing day. All right, I said finally. I'm in. But we do this my way. No improvisation, no heroics. We get in, confront her, record everything, and get out. Agreed? Julian nodded solemnly. Agreed. As we began to flesh out the details of our plan, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were heading toward a confrontation that would change everything. Not just our financial situation, but our understanding of Vivienne herself, and the complex web of lies she had woven around us all. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear. I'd spent a restless night oscillating between determination and doubt, my mind racing with all the ways our plan could go wrong. But as I threw together a small overnight bag, just in case, I reminded myself why we were doing this. For my father, whose heart was breaking under the weight of Vivienne's betrayal. For Julian, who deserved answers after a lifetime of manipulation. And for myself, because I was tired of being a victim in someone else's story. I met Julian in the kitchen at 6 a.m., as planned. My father was still asleep, his new medication made him drowsy, a side effect that worked in our favor today. Ready? Julian asked, jangling his car keys. As I'll ever be, I replied, leaving a note for my father on the counter. A vague explanation about spending the day with friends, along with assurances that we'd be back by tomorrow at the latest. The drive to Diane's beach house lasted nearly 5 hours, with a tense silence stretching between Julian and me for most of the journey. The coastal roads curved dangerously, mirroring the path we were taking, uncertain, risky, but somehow unavoidable. That's it, Julian said finally, pointing to a sprawling modernist structure perched on the cliffside. Its glass exterior reflected the afternoon sun, creating an illusion of impenetrability. Diane's pride and joy, paid for by husband number 2. We parked a discreet distance away, reviewing our plan one last time. Julian's phone had all the evidence, backed up to a cloud drive only he could access. My job was to keep Vivienne talking while he secretly recorded everything. Simple in theory. Terrifying in practice. The house seemed unnaturally quiet as we approached. No signs of the extravagant party Julian had anticipated. Something's wrong, I whispered, but Julian was already moving forward, determination in every step. We found Vivienne alone on the terrace, a half-empty wine glass in her hand. She showed no surprise at our appearance, just a cold, calculating assessment. I've been expecting you, she said, setting down her glass. Julian always was too clever for his own good. What unfolded next defied all our expectations. Vivienne, confronted with Julian's overwhelming evidence, didn't fight or flee. Instead, she laughed, a hollow sound devoid of humor. You want the money? Fine. It's already gone back to your father's accounts. All of it. Her eyes narrowed. Check if you don't believe me. A quick call to my father confirmed her claim. The stolen funds had been mysteriously returned that morning, with a notarized confession sent to his lawyer. Why? I demanded, struggling to comprehend this sudden surrender. Vivienne's gaze shifted to Julian, something like regret flickering across her face. Because my son deserves better than a mother in prison. She turned to me. And because some games, once exposed, lose their thrill. We left her there, framed against the endless ocean, a solitary figure diminished by her own machinations. The victory felt strangely hollow, anticlimactic after weeks of building tension. On the drive home, Julian finally spoke. She'll never change, you know. This is just another strategy. I know, I replied quietly. But we got what we came for. And somehow, that was enough. Not a perfect ending, but a beginning unencumbered by Vivienne's shadow. As we pulled into our driveway, my father waiting anxiously on the porch, I realized that while some wounds never fully heal, there's strength in the scars they leave behind, especially when you don't have to bear them alone.